Alion, the All-Father, has created paradise, and all his creations live in peace and harmony. But Azeroth hated the All-Father's creations, and tricked the All-Father into destroying his creations in fire, blood, and water. But before the All-Father can destroy all that he has wrought, he realizes that he is being manipulated by Azeroth to do so. Grief-stricken at the devastation that he has delivered, Alion turns away from the world and his creations, never to intervene again. While Azeroth is sealed away in the other world to keep him from intervening with the events in the real world, there is a prophecy that whispers of the Black Sun, avatar of Azeroth, and the Bright Star, avatar of Alion, and how they will plunge the world into the God War, where the fate of the world will be decided. This is the backdrop for John Gwynne's The Faithful and the Fallen series. The Faithful and the Fallen series consists of 4 books. The books are Malice, Valor, Ruin, and Wrath. Before I get into the review, let me explain how I actually do reviews. Personally, I'm not a fan of a single rating for an entire series or book. Many books and series have strengths and weaknesses that a single score doesn't properly reflect. So for my reviews, I use a 5-star rating system, with the 5 being the highest over 6 categories, and they are plot, world building, characters, magic system, writing, and enjoyment. But before I begin, these videos do take a lot of time to put together, so if you like the video, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Category 1, the plot. If I had to sum up the entire series in just one word, I would use the word classic. The Faithful and the Fallen series is very much a callback to classic fantasy, where you have a child from humble origins that goes on to becoming a hero that saves the world. This is not inherently bad or good on its own, it really comes down to personal preference. If you are a fan of classic fantasy, then you'll enjoy the Faithful and the Fallen series. If you roll your eyes at classic fantasy and find yourself in the grimdark fantasy camp, then you'll probably do a lot of eye rolling as events unfold. As a fantasy connoisseur, I like both subgenres. I like to think I can give you an unbiased opinion. As for the general plot of each book, in Book 1, Malice, we're introduced to the Banished Lands, which are home to humans, giants, and all manner of creatures, and its history from its creation by Alion, the All-Father, and his wrath after being tricked by Azeroth. We're also introduced to all of the major players. They are Corbin, the main character, Cywin, Corbin's sister, Veritas, a young and noble warrior looking to make a name for himself, Natair, Prince of Tenebril, Evnis, a counselor of the King of Arden, Brynn, Queen of Cambrin, and a whole slew of others. We get their backstories and motivations, and in the case of some, like Corbin and Veritas, we see a lot of development both physically and emotionally. Additionally, we're introduced to the God War prophecy, where the forces of evil will unite behind the Black Sun to fight the forces of good, united behind the Bright Star to decide the fate of the world. The book concludes with a dramatic showdown involving several of the main characters that sets up the second book. In Book 2, Valor, we are introduced to more characters, and a few of them are firmly in the bad guys camp, which is refreshing since you get to see more of how that side operates and the internal machinations going on there. Unlike in Malice, which focused on setting up the story and characters, Valor is more of an active book. There's a lot of fighting, internal and external, torture, and deceit. The book focuses on the events unfolding around certain characters. We have Corbin and his allies and their flight from the forces of the Black Sun due to the events of the first book. There's Cywin, who has been captured by the Black Sun, and from her perspective we learn that not everyone on that side is as evil as we think they are. And we have the third protagonist, who I won't name, who has been enslaved and forced to fight in the fighting pits, think Roman Colosseum, to survive. Book 3, Ruin, follows the events of Valor, and it follows pretty much the same blueprint. We're still focusing on several key characters and the events unfolding around them. Like Valor, there's a lot of carnage here. Lots of battles happen and are told from different perspectives. Several characters meet their end, some of which are actually POV characters. Ruin also really builds up Corbin. In Malice and Valor, you always felt that Corbin was a child, but Ruin makes you finally see him as an adult. But as the quote goes, the higher they rise, the harder they fall. That's all I'm going to tell you about how the book ends. And lastly, Book 4, Wrath. It picks up right after the events of Ruin and culminates with a Royal Rumble-esque battle at the end that decides the fate of the Banished Lands. A Can't go into real details without spoiling anything, but I will say that it resolves the conflicts established in the prior 3 books. As for my rating, I'm going to give the plot 3 stars out of 5. And let me tell you, I really struggle with that rating. As I said before, I don't lean towards classic or grimdark fantasy. As long as it's fantasy and it's good, then I'm in. It doesn't bother me that the main plot line of the series revolves around Corbin coming from nothing to becoming a hero. It just has to be executed properly, and I think John Gwynne slips up a little bit with the execution. For one, I feel like there are vast swaths of sections across all of the books where nothing happened that drives the plot forward. They can literally be cut to make things better paced. Then there are the plot contrivances that just makes me shake my head. Characters die in some gruesome, detailed ways in the books, which grants the fighting a measure of realism. But some characters survive wounds that they shouldn't for the sake of setting up a confrontation later. It doesn't feel natural at all. And lastly, the battles themselves just irked me. A lot. It's not so much the battles themselves, but for the majority of the battles, it feels like the quote-unquote bad guys are just dominating the good guys. It gets to the point where the good guys are literally down 5-1, yet they end up turning the tide because reasons? A clever ambush here, dumb, forced decisions by the bad guys here. It doesn't feel good. I understand that the author wants to establish a darkest before the dawn moment, but it just doesn't feel good. Still, it's mostly good for this genre, so I think 3 stars is fine. Category 2, World Building. I like the world here. The history of this world is very biblical, with Azeroth really taking on the role of Satan to deceive, destroy, and corrupt mankind. It even goes so far as describing the servants of Elion, the Ben Elam, as angelic with their white wings, and the Kadoshim, the servants of Azeroth, as demons. Some may not like that, but I think it's fine. Also, the giants are actually fleshed out through their POV characters. They don't feel like a throwaway race, but one that actually has history to it. So it's pretty good. Overall, I'll give it 4 stars out of 5. Category 3, the characters. What makes a character compelling is their motivations. Why do they want something? How far are they willing to go to obtain it? And are they willing to sacrifice for it or sacrifice it for something greater? John Gwynne does a great job of giving you the motivations of most of his characters, so you know what their aims are. But the key word there is most. Minor spoiler here, so be warned. The character Cywin confused me to no end. You get introduced to her in book 1, and she's established like an Arya from a Song of Ice and Fire type of character. But her character doesn't really develop. She fights with a lot of people, acts as an objective for her brother Corbin, and just sort of exists to the very end where she becomes super important. Yes, it's not great. Also, I don't think the antagonist POV characters were handled with the best of care. A well-written character shouldn't be an absolute. No one is purely good, and no one's purely evil. But a lot of the antagonists are established as purely evil. Literal mustache-twirling baddies. Again, not great. And lastly, we have Corbin. Corbin has a lot of Gary Stu in him. He's a great fighter. He's a healer. He can use magic. He's intelligent. He's a leader among men. He's compassionate. There's literally nothing he can't do. The only real negative for him is that he is a complete idiot around women characters. All that being said, I'll give the characters 3 stars out of 5. While I focus mostly on the negative, there are plenty of good characters with clearly defined motivations and are morally gray for the reader to explore and think about, which I believe balances the scales for the ones that aren't. Category 4, the magic system. So, there is a magic system in the Faithful and the Fallen, and it's called Earth Power. It's wielded primarily by the giants, but humans can use it too. The main feature of the magic here is hope and belief. It's not enough to say magic words to conjure fire, but you need to instill with hope and belief in order to make it reality. But there are also shortcuts to the system as well. In place of belief, you can use blood to fuel spells. It's not a bad system. The problem with it though is that it's not developed. We get a glimpse of its function when Corbin first starts to learn it, and then when he abandons it for reasons never really explained to us, we don't really hear much about it until it's needed to move the plot forward. Overall, I would give it 3 stars out of 5. Category 5, the writing. John Gwynne has some issues here. His prose, while generally fine, has some issues. For one, there are grammatical errors here and there. Also, he's prone to using the same adjective multiple times in the same sentence to describe something. That's generally not a good idea. Outside of his writing, his pacing could use some work. The first book is a slow burn. A lot of pages go by before anything really starts to happen. Understandable for a first book that's trying to set up the story, but unfortunately, all the other books in the series feel like you have to slog through the first 30% before things start to pick up. Doesn't feel particularly great. Overall, I would give it 2 stars out of 5. Category 6, Enjoyment. Honestly, I did enjoy The Fateful and the Fallen series despite its flaws. I really do like the battles and the gory details given to us by the author. The characters are mostly captivating and you do get invested in their joys and their heartbreaks. It's classic fantasy and there's nothing wrong about that. Overall, I would give it 3 stars out of 5. So that's my review of The Fateful and the Fallen series. I hope it helps you decide whether it's a series you want to invest your time in or not. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. And with that, I'll see you all in the next one.